to the Pop IQ training. We are going to wait a few more minutes for other folks to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Suzanne at the Health Federation, and welcome to our Network QI call this month, which is a little bit different than our usual call. We're doing this as a Pop IQ training. So I hope everyone can see the Pop IQ welcome screen on your screen. If you cannot see that screen, please let us know through using the chat box. Everyone is currently muted. This is a format that allows us to do a couple of different things than our usual GoToMeeting format. So unfortunately, that means that if you wish to speak, you need to raise your hand, and it should be pretty obvious how to do that in the GoToMeeting panel that you have on your screen. And we can unmute you for a question. You can also use the chat box to put in any questions, and I really encourage you to do that as we're going along. A couple of other things just as we're getting started before I turn this over to Jessica Chen, who's going to do most of this call today. We will be doing some polls during the webinar, and we'll ask you to use those. Can everyone hear me? If you cannot hear me, well, actually, that's not a good way to do it. If you can hear me, could you just write a note in the chat box and let me know that your audio is okay? That would be great. And Holly, if you could actually type a message to everyone to ask them the same question in case they can't hear us, that would be great. So we will be doing some polls during the course of the webinar, and that's really just to let us know, how you're using the tool or what you're getting out of the call today. There will also be a survey that will pop up after the webinar, a very quick survey, and we'd really appreciate your answers to those questions. Um, so that's that. And I did want to say one thing about Pop IQ. I know some of you who are on this call have access to Pop IQ and some of you don't. In some cases, you don't have access because we haven't implemented I2I with you yet. In that case, it's great that you're on. We appreciate your participation. This will serve as a nice introduction to the tool. And we will record this, so you will be able to go back and review it once you do have access. For those of you in organizations that have been with the network for a while and are fully implemented on I2I, if you don't have access, that's because somebody else in your organization has the username for Pop IQ. We are quite limited in how many usernames we have with I2I. We're right now, as we talked with a lot of you in the assessment meetings, we asked about who you wanted to be your main Pop IQ user, and so we're in the process of changing a lot of those users. If you're in that group and you do not currently have access, I will be getting you out username and password very soon, or I2I will be doing that directly. So just hang in there. I apologize that you don't have it right this moment, but we will be getting it to you very soon. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is that all use of this data warehouse is governed by a data sharing agreement that's signed by all of the folks who are publishing to it. We have copies of that signed data sharing agreement for each of the health centers. If you need that agreement, if you can't put your hands on it right at the moment, then please let us know. You can email me or you can email Holly, and we can get you a copy of that data sharing agreement. It's really important that anyone who's going to be in this system has read and signed off on that agreement, because this is everybody's data, and while it is not patient-identified data, and in fact the health centers participating are blinded, it's still very important that we respect the terms of that agreement. So that's all I'm going to say, unless I forgot something, but I'm sure I'll be reminded if I did. So I'm going to pass the call over to Jessica Chen, who, I don't know if everybody has met Jessica. She is our data analyst. She's been with the Health Federation for about 10 years and has done a lot of work in quality improvement and data, particularly around the HIV area of care. But she's really taken on the stewardship of Pop IQ and is in there more than any of the rest of us and has developed a lot of expertise around it. So we asked her to lead this training today. So Jessica, I'll pass the microphone over to you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Suzanne, and good afternoon, everyone. Suzanne, can you hear me okay still?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. So I'd like to start by just briefly explaining how Pop IQ is different from TRACS. Through TRACS, health center staff have access to patient-level data to support care management. What Pop IQ pulls in data from all of the health centers in our network to give a bigger picture of population health. You can use Pop IQ to analyze trends, compare data from your health center to other health centers, which are blinded, as well as to our network aggregate. As we begin, we're going to just take a quick poll to see how many of our attendees have logged into Pop IQ yet. Holly, are our poll results coming in? I don't see them on my screen. Okay. Well, I'll get started walking through Pop IQ. So when you log into Pop IQ, the screen will default to dashboard. And you'll select clinical dashboards to view graphs of clinical data. the I2I shared dashboards are pre-programmed by I2I and include various standardized measures like million hearts, meaningful use, UDS, which I'll pull up by just clicking on UDS 2015. The Health Federation shared dashboards are created by Health Federation and include measures for some of the projects we coordinate. For example, we have a HCCN measures dashboard that includes the UDS measures we are tracking in this round of the HCCN. Let's look at one of the graphs in the UDS dashboard. We can look at children fully immunized as an example. Should pop up there. The default shows our HCCN network aggregate, and by selecting controls, we can see some of the various options for viewing this graph. This graph is defaulted to showing the network aggregate broken out by ethnicity. You can break out data by various demographic criteria, or just view the aggregate as a whole. Under controls, select breakout by publisher to view the data by health center, and the legend shows which trend line corresponds to which health center. As we mentioned, this is all blinded. If you do not know which letter represents your health center, please ask us after the call. And I think we'll do another poll to see how many folks on the call are aware of their health center's letter. You can deselect other health centers to view your health center's trend line. And you could.
Jessica, I still have the poll up so they can let us know if they
do?
know what.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I'll just stop you real quick and I'll let you know what they say. Sorry.
Oh, thanks so much. So
just give them another second or two.
Oh, okay.
Are you able to see the poll?
I don't see the poll.
It looks like 56% do not know their Pop IQ letter. So if you want to reach out to us, we can definitely let you know what letter corresponds to your health center.
Perfect. Thanks, Holly. Okay, so you can see here that Health Center E's trendline is displayed. You can view this as a bar graph, which again, I guess all of the health centers are displaying again. Or you could view by count rather than percent. If you'd like to print or save any of the dashboard, right-click anywhere on the screen and you have the option to print or save. Just one caveat, when you do so, the graphs will be very small. So I'll show you when we get to the reports screen how you can produce graphs that are easier to manipulate by size when you export. I'll also show how to create your own dashboard from the reports screen, but please let us know after the call if there's any data for which you'd like Health Federation to create a dashboard that's not already here. Okay, the dashboard function provides a quick view of trends, but I think people will find the report screens are more useful for digging into data. So go to Reports and select Clinical Reports. And just as on the dashboard screen, the I2I shared reports are pre-programmed by I2I. And let's go down and look at the UDS 2015 report, since that's relevant to everyone on this call. Simply click on the report to run it. And please note this is the 2015 UDS data. We anticipate that I2I will make the 2016 report available in the coming weeks or months, hopefully. The default is to the network aggregate and to the most recently completed month, which you can change by using the drop-down menu here. In order to view by health center, click on the down arrow next to all and select the ABC triangle. And again, the data is blinded. So please follow up with us after the call to learn which health center or which letter corresponds to your health center. There are two ways to view only your health center's data if you would like to do so. You can either select the empty bubble next to each of the other health centers displayed, or go to the down arrow next to all and deselect all by selecting the empty bubble there. And you can then select the bubble next to your organization. And I usually choose the letter that corresponds to the health center letter because that's what will display on the report. You can break this data out further by right-clicking on the health center, and you can select either site view or zip code view. I'm not going to select that now because it will show this health center's data by site. You can also break out the data by various demographic criteria, such as ethnicity, financial class, or gender. And that will display here. If you'd like to see trend lines over time, you can view any measure as a graph. So let's do childhood immunizations again. Right-click on the measure that you'd like to view, and then select Display Trend Graph. We have yet to find a use for the heat maps. So this is just Health Center B's data displaying on the graph. The functions here are similar to what we saw in dashboards. You could change this to a bar graph. You could change it to account rather than percent. And you can select any to display by any demographic criteria. You can also add in the network aggregate if you'd like to compare to our network aggregate. When we produce graphs to share with you, we use this function and enlarge and copy and paste into a document, which we find more convenient than exporting from dashboards. You can, if you'd like, save any chart into a dashboard by clicking on the little plus sign in the upper left corner. And Health Center staff can save to My Dashboards. I don't think you have permissions to save to the Health Federation shared dashboards. You can save to any existing dashboard that you've already created under My Dashboards, or you can create a new dashboard. Just one thing to be aware of is the dashboard will not maintain the same settings once you log out and log back into Pop IQ. So if you save a graph of just your health center's trend line to a dashboard, The next time you log in, that dashboard will display our network aggregate by default. So it usually works best to go through reports to create a graph if you'd like to produce it to share with others at your health center. Okay. In addition to the I2I pre-programmed reports, Health Federation has created a number of reports that are available to you. For instance, there's a copy of the 2015 UDS, which you can see graphs broken out by quarter rather than by month. We also have an approximation of the 2016 UDS. It's not exact because some of the criteria for exclusions on some measures were not yet available in Pop IQ. But as I said, we've been told that I2I will program a report into Pop IQ with the 2016 UDS definitions in the near future. I'll show how to create your own reports, but after today, if there's a report that you'd like to see that isn't here, please let me know, and I'm happy to put together a report with criteria that you're interested in and share it under Health Federation shared reports. For example, for one of our projects, we looked at the difference in numbers of undiagnosed hypertensives when we used the criteria of 3 high blood pressure readings versus 2 high blood pressure readings. So we're going to pause for a moment and take another poll to see how folks think they may use Pop IQ.
Okay, it looks like everybody voted. So Jessica, I'm going to relay the results to you since you can't see the screen. 69%, the majority of folks say that they use the reports for data for QI projects. To tie for second place, 54% of people said that they either use it for generating reports for the board and also for comparison to other health centers. And then 23% of people were not sure or I guess haven't used the reports yet.
Okay, great. Great, thanks everyone. So moving along to My Reports, you can create or edit a report in My Reports, and anything saved here will only be available under your own login. So for example, if you would like to customize, for example, the adult immunizations report that we have in the shared reports file, right-click on that report and select Copy to My Reports, and OK. Then go down to the new copy of the report in My Reports and click on it to run the report. Then click anywhere, right-click anywhere on the report and select Edit Report. Okay. Once you are on the report editing screen, you have a view of all the criteria that are already written into the report. You can change any of these criteria in your version of the report. For example, you might choose to look at a range of ages for the flu vaccine. So you would change this from greater than 18 to maybe between 18 and 50. You can add criteria to this report. For example, if you wanted to look at patients who were pregnant and had a flu shot, you would make sure that this line is highlighted. Then under available criteria, you would go to problem and then select pregnancy diagnosis. just click on it. And then you'll see that criteria has been added to the line. And then you may want to change some of the parameters on this criteria. Maybe you would change this from last pregnancy diagnosis to any. Maybe you would change the time frame to the past 6 months. You can also add lines to a report. To do so, right-click where you want to add a line and select Insert New Line, either before or after. And then you can add criteria the same way that we just reviewed. You can shift the position of your new line, left, right, up, or down, in accordance with what you would like it to reflect. So if I moved this new line to the right, the denominator for whatever I put here would be active patients age 18 or older with at least one medical visit and with at least one tetanus vaccine in the past year. Once you're satisfied with the report, be sure to save your changes by going to Report Template Actions and then selecting Save and Regenerate, which I'm not going to do now because it takes a little while to refresh the data. Okay. A report can be written from scratch by selecting New next to My Reports. So you name your report. And a blank template should appear. Start with whatever you want your denominator to be. So, for example, if you wanted to find the number and percentage of your adult patients with hypertension, you would first define your denominator on this line by going to a criteria, demographics, age, and you would want patients age 18 and up. And don't forget to enter on the line title a description of your criteria. You may also here want to limit this N to your active patients or to your patients who've had at least one medical visit in the past year. So you would go to visits under events and at least one medical visit. Next, right-click to insert a new line. Shift the line over to the right so that you have a denominator. And if we wanted to look at number of hypertensive patients, we'd find that under Problems. Once you're finished, don't forget to save your report by going to Report Template Actions, Save and Generate. While you're in the editing report template, you can view the Pop IQ mappings for any of the available criteria. And you would do this by right-clicking on any of the criteria and selecting View Mapping. This may take a moment to load. The first thing that you'll want to do once the mappings have loaded is make sure that your health center is displayed here. When I log in, for some reason, Health Center G is the default. I'm not sure if when you log in from the Health Center view, if you can only, I believe you can only see your health center's mappings. Once the mappings are loaded, it's easiest if you collapse all and then select or find the mapping that you want to view. So if you wanted to see how hypertension is mapped for your health center to Pop IQ, go to problems, and then hypertension unspecified. And you can see all of the ICD codes that are mapped to hypertension, and also that this is mapped to the problem of hypertension in tracks. Unfortunately, there's no good way to export the mappings. Selecting print will print out all of the mappings for all of the criteria and use a lot of paper. When we want to be able to view the mappings without handwriting them down, I just take screenshots and copy and paste them into another document. If you have a question about your Pop IQ mappings and forget how to find them or don't have time to go into Pop IQ and find them, please let me know and I'm happy to look things up. We've been going through a data validation process with I2I around Pop IQ, so please do let us know if you see something that doesn't look right in here or if you have a question. And I think Anya is going to jump in and explain a bit more about the relationship between Pop IQ and I2I tracks. But this might be a good time to pause for any questions about what we've covered so far.
Holly, have you seen any questions come through?
No, there's not any questions pending currently, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box if you're able to use that. That's the easiest way to communicate with us. I can unmute you if you have any questions or comments, or you can put them in the questions box. I'm monitoring that as well.
Great, thank you. So hi everybody, this is Anya. I just wanted to talk for a couple of minutes about the relationship between Pop IQ and tracks and how and why to maintain your mappings. Essentially, as Jessica discussed, Pop IQ is really useful for trending. Also, developing graphs is kind of quick and easy. It doesn't depend on the speed of your own system. And it gives you the opportunity to look at comparative data with other health centers, which is not something you have access to in tracks. However, the degree to which your tracks reports and the Pop IQ reports coincide with each other is entirely dependent on their being mapped at least similarly. There are some ways in which Pop IQ reports will always be have a tendency toward a slight discrepancy, and that has to do with the way visits are counted and dates of birth are counted. So as you may recall from your HRSA UDS manual, the handbook, it'll say, you know, children born, turning 2 by June 30th, 2016, for example. And so that accounts for some slight differences, but fundamentally the mappings are going to determine the major differences. And so because your EMR data are constantly changing, because your medication formularies are constantly being refreshed, and you may also have new workflows, for example, when you revise a process in your health center, or if you have an upgrade to a system and the way data are captured changes. So maintaining those mappings in I2I tracks should be a recurring process. Some things probably should happen monthly or at least quarterly. Other things may be less urgent and can be revised every 6 months or so. Nonetheless, they need kind of regular refreshes, and it's important, if you're making any significant changes to those things, to stay in touch with I2I so that your Pop IQ mappings can also be refreshed. Otherwise, your graphs are going to start to diverge, and they're going to be telling different stories, essentially. So an example of a way that I would recommend approaching this is when you map a new process to Pop IQ, or rather in tracks. Let's say a new lab test you have a new way of documenting that a woman received a PAP, perhaps a PAP that she got outside your health center. You want to map that to a relatively standard measure, ideally that's already mapped in Pop IQ. So for example, PAP I2I is a good example of that. Or if you choose not to use that one because you're not using the PAP tracking feature, you could have a standard measure you call cervical cancer screening. When you map to that, if you change the mappings, if you say in Pop IQ a PAP equals cervical cancer screening, then when you update the things to which cervical cancer screening is linked in tracks, that will automatically update, so you won't have that divergence of your reports. So maintaining some degree of standardization in how you map in tracks will help you in Pop IQ, but it's always helpful to review the mappings in Pop IQ and make sure that they are aligned. This time of year, when you're paying a lot of attention to your UDS report, is also a good time to do that. And as Jessica mentioned, we've been working with the folks who do the mappings in Pop IQ to validate some of those data. I know that's a little bit convoluted, but I hope that it's clear enough, and we're also happy to assist you if you have questions about mapping as you go along.
Thanks, Anya. Since we have time, when everyone joined the call, I was already logged onto Pop IQ, but just because some folks haven't been on Pop IQ yet, I want to show how you can, what it looks like to log in and log back out again. So this is Pop IQ is a web-based tool. It is not something that you access through tracks. So to access it, you actually go in through a secure website. And if you don't already have your username and password, we will work with us, or we will work with you to get that. And it usually just takes a couple of moments for everything to be pulled up. And we're back to the welcome screen. That's all that I had. Are there any questions? Suzanne, is there anything you'd like to circle back to?
I guess if anyone on the call has a particular measure or report that you'd like to see, just pop it in the chat box and we can show it. Just a couple of things that, as I use Pop IQ, just a couple of tips. One is just make sure that when you want to be in reports, you're in reports. Since dashboards is the default thing that comes up, I often end up looking at dashboards when I don't mean to. Another thing, Jessica, if you just want to show the way that the panels close in the report, so just as a way of moving around the screen, that can make things a lot easier in terms of maneuvering through. It's a very horizontal presentation, so they do have some things that help you see what you want to see.
Sure. This is what you mean, Suzanne. You can pull up multiple reports.
You can pull up multiple reports, and you can close if you want to close out the index of reports, so more of your screen space is taken with the little, those guys. Mm-hmm. Just because if you're looking across health centers, it's easier to have that space.
Mm-hmm. And you can, when you display a graph, you can maximize it so it takes up your whole screen, which is useful if you are copying and pasting into a document.
Another thing that's important is always to look at what is the time period that you're pulling up. Jessica showed the end dates there. So this is, I think pretty much all the reports are based on a year's worth of data. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that
actually, can I interject? I'm sorry. We actually had a question which fits in perfectly to this conversation. How is age defined at a single point in time? Is the question.
That's a good question. Anya or Suzanne, do you know how, so
whether it's at the beginning or the end of the reporting period?
Yeah.
I do not know. I know that that's the source of some of the difference between your UDS reporting in TRACS and Pop IQ, but I'm not sure if they just pick the middle of the current year or the reporting year, or if they use age at a given date, beginning or end.
I mean, I'm guessing that for measures like the childhood immunization, it would be at the, I mean, isn't that, it would be at the end of the reporting period? Because that's what you would want to know. But that's a good question, and we can follow up on that.
Right.
There is, you can, there are some things you can define around reporting period for certain measures, which is different from the time period of the report. I don't know if you want to show that, if there's something that has that within it.
Sure. I'm just pulling up the UDS, the copy that we have in our shared reports, which lets me edit or view the criteria. You can, for some measures, you can customize. I don't know if you can customize whether it's 3 at the beginning or 3 at the end of the reporting period, but medical visits, for example. Sorry?
In period options, is that where you change the reporting period?
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, there we go. So you can look back. This is set to look back 8 quarters, so 2 years. So when we run a graph, that's what it shows us over a 2-year period. But you could change that to any number of years, quarters, or months. And you can change your sample to quarters, months, or years. So again, if you were to produce a trend line, the trend line would break out by whatever you specify here. And then each sample you can set to look back by year, quarter, or month. So these, I believe all these measures are looking back by 1 year. But if you have a question about how something's defined, you can make a copy of the report into My Reports, and then that would allow you to go to the editing screen, which then you can see how the various measures are defined for that report.
You can see in this report actually how the Pop IQ report might start to look a little bit different from your TRACS report, because the TRACS report actually looks at whether the PCV was given at the right time, not just that they've had 4. whereas this report will identify any child in the numerator as having had the appropriate number of vaccines by their second birthday. Right? So that's really a potential source of usually minor differences between the reports.
I think the differences we see for those reasons are very minor so far.
And just as a reminder, I know we've said this before, but particularly for the immunization measure, this is one that's going to look pretty dramatically different in terms of your results for 2016 because of the addition of the flu and rotavirus to the mix. So everyone's rates are expected to go down somewhat in 2016. I have a related. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We have another question that came in. Is it possible to identify children not up to date with immunizations in Pop IQ?
You could find the number or percent of children who are not up to date. There's no patient level data in Pop IQ, so you wouldn't be able to produce a list of children who are not up to date on their immunizations. But you could certainly create a report with the parameters of children with a certain birth, or children who are 3 and have not had these immunizations. And that's something I didn't show when I was demonstrating how to write a report. To negate any measure, right-click on the criteria and select negate expression. So if I were to do that, if I were to go through and do this for any of the immunizations here, when I regenerated the report, I would get the number of children who did not have their 4 DTaPs or whatever I wanted to view.
From a QI perspective, what you're talking about, identifying essentially a pool of patients who might need an intervention, is really what your patient searches are built for. So you could, for example, build a search that identifies all children turning 2 this year who have had 1 but not 2 flu shots, since you really don't have time to give them 2 before the end of the year yet anymore, and then capture all those kids, get them their second flu shot, for example. But that's really, that patient level data is a function of I2I tracks rather than the aggregate level reporting we're looking at now.
Jessica, like the negate expression, can you show the changing the and to an or?
Oh, yes. I'll just demonstrate. I don't think you would do this, but for your immunizations. But if you wanted to change this to an or, you would likewise right-click. Or actually, no, you wouldn't right-click. You would just click on it, and it toggles between and or. You can also move these criteria around. So, for example, if I wanted, I'm not going to save these changes. I'll just demonstrate. If I wanted to look at patients who either had 1 medical visit or, again, this won't make sense as a measure, but just to demonstrate, or 1 behavioral health visit, I would add the behavioral health visit. Then you can move these criteria around so that they're grouped together, and then I would change this to an and or an or. So I found as I was learning Pop IQ, a good way to figure out how to define measures was to start with something already existing, like the UDS, and see what the criteria looked like, and then mimic that when I was setting up criteria in new reports, depending on what I wanted to look at.
Yeah, and there's enough stuff in there between the I2I generated reports and the HFP generated reports that usually you can find something with at least the start of the measure that that you want, that you can then copy to my reports and modify. You generally shouldn't have to start from scratch.
Right. And if you do have a question, please feel free to ask me, or if you'd like us to modify one of the reports that's already in here or create a new copy that's slightly different, please let us know, and we're happy to take requests. Another resource, this little question mark here, takes you to the help function in Pop IQ, and is also a good resource for looking up how to do things. So there's a basic overview. This shows kind of a graphic of how the data gets into Pop IQ. And then some other basics, how to run a report, how to view by site, etc.
So one other thing that's probably important to mention about Pop IQ, and that's different between tracks and Pop IQ, is that Pop IQ is a limited data set, and that means not only that that there's no patient-identified information in there, but also that there's a very specific set of data elements that are brought into this tool. So if it's not in this list on the left-hand side, you can't use it. Now, we have had some success convincing I2I that certain things need to be brought in that weren't there originally. So that's something that can go through the enhancement request process. But mostly the data elements that are in Pop IQ are those that are seen as necessary for this kind of aggregate reporting. So that are part of the UDS report measures, that are part of the CQM, the meaningful use quality measure data sets. So there certainly are things that are missing from here. There's a lot here categorized under these different folders, but there are many things that are not here, and sometimes that means that you just can't do that in Pop IQ, and you need to do it in tracks or in another way. But it is just to be clear that we know that it has its limits, and it's not like tracks where basically anything that's in the practice management or EHR you can use as long as it's discrete data.
This is Anya again. If I could just put in a plug for one thing. This year, because the UDS is changing a lot, and this is less related to Pop IQ, although it may be relevant as well, because the UDS is changing so much, you may want to run and save your full UDS report as an Excel file before it switches over to the 2016 version, so that when you run it in the 2016 version, if you're curious whether a change is due to the change in definitions or some other cause, you have something to go back to. Even if the dates aren't exact, even if you're looking at November to November instead of January to January, that will serve you well. So I strongly recommend that, sometime in the next week or so, you do run your UDS report once, and just save that file for comparison purposes later on.
And you save the file by selecting Export Report, and then choose where you'd like to save. It'll save as an Excel file, as Anya said. It'll actually save as an XML document that converts into an Excel file when you open it.
Jessica, I actually have a couple of other questions coming in.
Okay, great.
The first is the question, is Pop IQ something that comes with I2I?
Suzanne?
So, yeah, in our setup, yes, sort of. The way that Pop IQ is part of what, if you're a network member and you're implementing the I2I suite of products as part of being a network member or as part of being in the Chronic Disease Collaborative Project, yes, you will get access to Pop IQ. It's not, and you will get access to being part of our network version of Pop IQ. There's a lot of networks out there with their own Pop IQs with the health centers that they work with in them. It is a separate, to a certain degree, it's a separate implementation, but it's not, it has a data validation attached to it, but it's nowhere near as time-consuming as TRAC's implementation. It doesn't require a server. It's software as a service, so it's web-based. So when you're in the TRAC's implementation process, at some point in that process, we will say, okay, we're going to get started on Pop IQ, and we'll have a part of the project plan that's about, the Pop IQ. There's some paperwork that needs to be signed, and there's some data validation that needs to happen between TRACS and Pop IQ. And hopefully, you will go live on both TRACS and Pop IQ within pretty short time frame of each other. That's where we're trying to get it to be almost simultaneous. So you'll have access to both tools. So I hope that answers the question.
And there was one other question, which you guys might need a little bit of elaboration on. So if you do, I can unmute the individual who asked. The question is just, do you provide written documentation? Does that, you know what, she just raised her hand. So Yvonne, I'm going to unmute you if you're able to elaborate upon that a little bit. And if you had another question, feel free to let us know. Go ahead. Yvonne, if you wanted to speak, I have you unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, I was talking, but you couldn't hear me. Yeah, I was wondering if there was written documentation for how to use I2I, the various components, but then somebody pointed out the information on the left side, so I'm fine. Hello?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just realizing I didn't. Okay, there's one thing I didn't demonstrate. We have the ability through Pop IQ to view what we believe you see when you run your tracks, your UDS report in tracks. And so as we've been working on making sure the Pop IQ data is accurate, this is what we've been using. We can't manipulate these reports at all, but when we run this report, we should be seeing what you would see if you were to run a UDS report in tracks. I actually don't know that I don't know that health centers if health centers can see the tracks report. I'm not sure if that's something that Health Federation is unique to Health Federation's logins.
Yeah, and they wouldn't really need to because they have tracks.
Right, of course.
So generally you're better off, and because we only have the sort of current UDS, it's not flexible in terms of being a reporting tool. It's just that one report.
Any other questions?
I will say, when you forget how to do something in Pop IQ, try right-clicking or hitting Enter. Those are the two, sort of the two keyboard things that tend to work a lot of the time. It's pretty intuitive. Nothing requires any elaborate keyboard manipulation or anything, but sometimes when you're first using it, it can get hard to remember what you have to do. But if you do forget how to do something, obviously we'll make this recording available on the network portal, and also please don't hesitate to reach out to us or to I2I to say, how do I do this if you can't find it in the documentation.
Do we have time for one more question?
Sure.
Jessica, on the far right-hand side of your screen, to the right of Group B, it's a blank column. The user wanted to know how you would use that far right column, or if that's just blank because of, I guess, the way you structured your report.
I think it's just blank because I limited this to Group B. I think it was just filling in the screen. You can add, if you did want to view your health center or all the health center data and compare to the network aggregate, you can add the network aggregate, and it'll show as another column on this display.
That way you can see at a glance how an individual health center compares to the aggregate. And again, you can always do that using a trend graph as well. That's probably the function that we use most frequently, is running a report and then creating a trend graph out of it. It's just much easier than really any other way of doing it. And if you hover over the lines and the points, it gives you the health center and the value. Unfortunately, the way these reports print, there's not a lot of control over things like colors. So it can be not as clear as we would like them to be, as some of you who've seen them in meetings know.
Looks like we might have one more question. Yvonne, if you wanted, I can unmute you. You're unmuted if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, so if we have three health centers or 8 health centers data in the system, could we aggregate our sites only?
Yes.
Or is the aggregate an aggregate of all the sites that are involved?
Yes, you have the ability for your health center to look at the site level. So we're not going to show you that because at the site level you see the names and that gets rid of our blinding.
Okay.
But Jessica's showing how that can be done on the screen. But you can do the exact same things with your sites that we can do with the different health centers. So you can take those sites, aggregate some of them, leave others out, compare them to each other, do them as a whole. So yes, that is available to you. And you can also do the same thing with your patients' zip codes. So that's just something to think about if you do anything that is zip code based. Again, that's at the level of the health center. We can't look at zip codes across the whole population, at least without a lot of manipulation outside of the system, but we can look at them within each health center.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. That's a great question.
If I could, Nick, just also, I keep having ideas of ways in which I would want to use this if I were still in a health center. You know, one of the things that you can see on the dashboards is the trend line. And sometimes, even though you're following your numbers closely, those trend lines can reveal things about your data or your mappings or your internal processes that you might not pick up just by looking at a column of numbers. And so I do recommend that you just pop in there and take a look at the UDS, just a quick glance at all the graphs every couple months or so, just to see which direction you're heading, because you don't want to be surprised by it on February 1st when you're getting your UDS together. And sometimes the solution can be very simple, like identifying a new hemoglobin A1C test name that's been added to the mix at LabCorp, for example, that's going to change your diabetes measure.
And often when we reach out to you and say, hey, something looks a little funky with your data, that's what we've been doing, is looking at those trend graphs. And if we see somebody's measure drop off all of a sudden, it's pretty clear that there's something going on in terms of the way the data are mapped. So that's what we're using as kind of our early warning system at the network level.
Anything else?
There's no other questions that have come through.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for participating, and I think we all said it like 5 times, but really don't hesitate to reach out to us around the use of this tool. If there's a particular report that you want, we can create it for you. If there's an issue with your data, if there's something that you're not understanding how to do it, please don't hesitate to reach out. And you know, we hope it will be a useful tool in your arsenal. Also, if you need a copy of your data sharing agreement, if you need to know which letter you are, obviously for those of you who are new to the network, this is still a preview of coming attractions. But if you're a current user of I2I and you don't know how to access your data, please let us know. Does anyone have anything else they want to add? Okay, so
I think from the health. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Seth.
No, go ahead.
I was going to reiterate that after the call, there will be a brief survey that should pop up. It's 5 or 6 very brief questions. We'd really appreciate your taking the time to fill that out before you close out the webinar.
Thanks. And as always, we will post the recording to the network portal. If you don't have access to the portal, please email Holly and she'll help you figure out how to get in. And I think we can send around the link as well, so that folks who may have not used it in a while can go directly there. Is there anything else around follow-up? Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Have a good afternoon.